Hey there, awesome human. Glad you stumbled into my little corner of the internet. If it's your first time here, hit that subscribe button and toss this video to your friends or family. It seriously helps. Tell me, from which part of the world are you watching? I read every single comment. Let's dive in. I was in Section C stacking pallets when my phone buzzed against my thigh for the third time in less than 10 minutes. The warehouse roared with its usual chaos. Forklifts beeping in reverse, conveyor belts clattering, voices calling orders from across the floor. I'd already dismissed 2 earlier calls from an unfamiliar number, figuring it was spam. Still, something made me swipe to answer this time. The voice on the other end was calm, clipped, and professional, not the flat monotone of a robocall. "Is this Damon Riker?" "Yeah, who's this?" I replied. "Your wife is in room 216 at the Ridgecrest Hotel with another man, right now." Her tone was as plain as if she were giving a weather report. The pallet jack in my hands suddenly felt like dead weight. I set it down, my thoughts colliding and scattering. "What? Who is this?" "Someone who thought you should know," she said. "Lady, you've got the wrong—" I began, but she cut me short. "Check your phone in 30 seconds. The line went dead. I stood motionless under the warehouse's buzzing fluorescent lights, my phone gripped tight as if it might explode. All around me, the work continued. Ryan barking about a missing shipment, the crash of pallets hitting concrete, the whine of dock doors rolling open. 5 years I'd been here. Same work, same people, same rhythm etched into my muscles. Maya wouldn't, not her, not my Maya. We'd been together since we were 17, married for 8 years. Today, she was supposed to be at her mother's house, helping with spring cleaning. This morning, she'd kissed me goodbye, her hair still mussed from sleep, wearing that old Northwestern sweatshirt she'd stolen from me back in college. Then my phone buzzed again, a video message. My hand trembled as I tapped it open. The timestamp read 1:47 p.m., just 2 hours earlier. There she was. My wife. She was crossing a hotel parking lot in the yellow sundress I'd bought for our anniversary last month. Her hair was styled the way she only wore it for special occasions, and she was laughing at something just out of frame. A man's arm entered the shot. Tanned, muscular, nothing like mine. He pulled her close, and she leaned in without hesitation. Together, they walked toward a door marked 216. She already had a keycard in her hand, like this wasn't her first time. As she swiped the lock, his palm slid to the small of her back. She looked up at him with a smile I knew by heart, the same one she used to give me when we were young and inseparable. They stepped inside. The video ended. I watched it again and again, each time hoping I'd spot some detail I'd overlooked, something to rewrite the truth. But no, it was her, in a hotel, with another man, in the middle of a Tuesday, when she was supposed to be helping her mother. The noise of the warehouse faded to a dull hum. My chest felt tight, like unseen hands were pressing hard against my ribs. I'd read about moments like this, seen them in movies, when life veers off course in an instant. But reality was harsher. My vision swam at the edges. My mouth went dry. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Beneath the shock, beneath the ache that spread like poison, something else began to take hold. A cold, focused calm I barely recognized as mine. Sliding the phone into my pocket, I crossed the floor to Ryan's office. He was hunched over shipping manifests, reading glasses low on his nose. "Ryan, I need to take emergency leave," I said. He looked up, studying me over the frames. In 5 years, he'd learned my tells, the even voice, the rigid stance. "Everything okay, Damon?" he asked, cautious. "No," I answered evenly, "but it will be." He considered me for a long second, then gave a single nod. "Take what you need. We'll cover your routes." I was nearly out the door when he called after me. "Damon, don't do anything stupid." I paused for a heartbeat. "I won't." Crossing the warehouse felt like moving underwater. The smells, diesel, cardboard dust, the faint tang of metal, barely registered. I clocked out, grabbed my jacket from my locker, and headed to the parking lot. Sitting in my truck, I stared at my phone for a long time before making 2 calls. The first was to Peter and Clara Harlan, Maya's parents. They'd taken me in at 18, treated me like their own son. Peter had taught me how to rebuild an engine in his garage. Clara had always saved me a seat at Sunday dinner. They adored their daughter, but they'd also raised her to value loyalty, family, and doing what was right, no matter the cost. "Clara, it's Damon," I said as soon as she picked up. "Maya's not doing well. She's at the Ridgecrest Hotel, and I think you and Peter need to come, both of you." "What? Damon, what's happening? Why would she be in a hotel?" Clara's voice carried that unmistakable edge of a mother's worry. I let a pause hang between us, knowing her thoughts would race to fill the silence. "Just get there," I said finally. "Please, room 216. She needs you right now." My next call wasn't to any person. It was to something less tangible. Call it fate, justice, or that point where you decide you're done protecting someone who's been smiling at you while living a lie behind your back. Then I started the truck and headed for the Ridgecrest, where my wife was about to find out that some doors, once opened, never close again. The 23 minutes it took to get there gave me uninterrupted time to think. For the first time since that anonymous voice on the phone, my mind felt crystal clear, like someone had taken a blurry lens I'd been looking through for months and brought it sharply into focus. I thought about the Holloways as I navigated the traffic. Peter, broad frame, calloused hands, had built his auto shop from nothing and still spent his days under the hood, even at 62. He'd taught me much of what I knew about fixing what's broken, about pride in honest work, about repairing things instead of discarding them. But it wasn't only engines he taught me about. It was integrity, how to keep your word, how to show up when you say you will, how never to take what doesn't belong to you. And Clara, the soul of their family. She still simmered Sunday sauce from scratch, banned phones at dinner, and ended every text, yes, even to me, with "Love, Mom." She'd raised Maya to respect family, to believe marriage vows were unbreakable, to treat a promise as sacred. They were going to be devastated. But they deserved the truth about their daughter. My phone lit up twice while I was driving, Maya both times. I let it ring out. She was probably already wondering why her parents were hearing from me, why I wasn't answering. Maybe she was starting to doubt her Girls' Day excuse. Good. Let her. The Ridgecrest was the sort of mid-tier business hotel meant for traveling salespeople and small conference crowds. Too respectable to feel seedy, too bland to remember. Perfect for whatever Maya thought she was getting away with. I wondered how many weekday afternoons she'd spent here, how long this had been going on, how many lies I'd swallowed without a second thought. I parked where I could see the entrance. The Holloway's silver Camry, Peter's well-kept 6-year-old find, pulled in a few minutes later. My pulse quickened. They got out, dressed neatly but casually. Peter in clean jeans and a button-up, Clara in her navy dress scattered with little flowers. They both looked concerned, puzzled. Clara clutched her purse to her chest the way she did when she was uneasy. Peter glanced at his phone, likely sending me a text for clarification. They had no idea what they were about to walk into, no sense that within minutes, the picture-perfect image they carried of their daughter would shatter like glass dropped on concrete. For a moment, guilt tightened in my throat as I watched them disappear through the glass doors. They didn't deserve this, but neither did I. And if Maya had thought for even a second about sparing them pain, she wouldn't have been in that room with another man. I gave them 3 minutes, enough time to ride the elevator to the second floor, find 216 and knock. Enough time for Maya to open the door, expecting housekeeping or room service. Enough time for confusion to bloom in that hallway. Then I got out of the truck and went inside. The lobby was business hotel standard, beige carpet, faux leather chairs, and the cloying sweetness of air freshener failing to mask years of stale smoke. The elevator crawled upward. When the doors slid open on the second floor, I heard voices down the hallway, shocked, raised, uncertain. I followed the sound to room 216. The door stood slightly open. Through the gap, I saw Maya in a white hotel robe, her face drained of color. Her parents stood in the doorway, frozen, their eyes darting between her and the man behind her, half-dressed and scrambling to gather his clothes. It was the collision point, lies meeting truth head-on, choices staring down consequences. The moment my wife of 11 years unraveled in front of the two people whose approval she'd always sought. I stepped up behind the Holloways, and 4 faces turned toward me, but my eyes found only hers. "Hello, Maya," I said quietly. The air in that room was heavy enough to choke on. 4 people stood in the same room, sharing the same charged atmosphere, each absorbing the crushing truth in their own private way. Maya stood frozen in the doorway, the belt of her hotel bathrobe tied hastily in an uneven knot. Her hair was mussed, her lipstick gone, and a familiar flush spread across her chest, one I knew well after 8 years of marriage. She'd clearly been expecting someone else, room service, maybe housekeeping. Instead, she was staring at her parents and her husband, all 3 now fully aware of the truth she had kept hidden. Behind her, fumbling awkwardly with his pants, was a man whose name I didn't yet know. Later, I would learn it was Blake Cooper, but even then, his appearance told me more than enough. He was broad-shouldered, tanned, and the type who clearly invested time and money into his physique, his hairstyle, and his smile. Everything I wasn't. His eyes darted around in a frantic search for an escape route, one that wouldn't force him to walk past the 3 people blocking the doorway. In less than 30 seconds, Peter Harlan's face cycled through a range of emotions. First came confusion. What was his daughter doing in a hotel room in the middle of the day? Then came concern. Was she in trouble? Hurt? Sick? And then the slow, dawning devastation. The robe, the unmade bed, the half-clothed stranger. His face went pale, and for a brief moment, I thought he might collapse. When he finally spoke, his voice broke under the weight of the word. "Maya, what is this?" Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Her eyes flicked between her parents and me, as if searching for someone who could rescue her with a believable explanation. But there was no story that could salvage this moment. "Daddy, Her voice was almost too faint to hear. "It was a mistake. Just once. I promise. Only once." That was when I understood she still didn't grasp the full extent of what she'd done. To her, this was only about the physical act. She didn't see the deeper betrayal, the months of lies, the calculated secrecy, the way she had looked me in the eyes each day while living another life in the shadows. By then, Blake had managed to pull on his pants and took a step forward, as though he could somehow take control of the moment. "Look, I know this looks bad, but—" He never finished. Peter's fist connected hard with his jaw, slamming him into the wall. For a 62-year-old mechanic, Peter still packed plenty of strength. His voice came out low, tight, and lethal. "Don't, not another word." Blake leaned against the wall, one hand on his jaw, eyes wide in shock. He had the look of someone unfamiliar with consequences, someone used to talking or charming his way out of trouble. But Peter Harlan was not a man to be charmed. "You married?" Peter asked sharply. Blake gave a tight nod, still rubbing his jaw. "Kids?" Peter pressed, another nod. Peter's boot landed in his ribs, not enough to break anything, but enough to make his point crystal clear. "Get out, now before I walk you straight to your wife and tell her exactly what you've been doing." Blake grabbed his shirt and shoes without another word, slipping past us without meeting anyone's gaze. The door slammed behind him, leaving only what was left of the family inside the room. Clara hadn't spoken once since stepping in. She stared at her daughter as though looking at a stranger who had betrayed every lesson she'd been raised with about marriage, loyalty, and integrity. "Mom, please, I can explain," Maya said, desperation cracking her voice. "Explain what?" My voice sounded foreign to me, flat, drained. "Explain how you've been lying for months? How you kissed me goodbye this morning and then came here to sleep with another man? How you turned me into a fool in front of everyone?" Tears streaked her face. "Damon, it doesn't mean anything. I love you. I've always loved you. I shook my head. Number, you loved the security I gave you. You loved having a place to land after you were done with your games. But you don't love me. You don't respect me. And you sure as hell don't respect our vows. She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. I'd heard enough apologies, seen enough tears. None of it could erase the months of deceit. Keep the robe, I said flatly. Just don't come back to my house. We're done. Damon, please, she started, but I was already turning away. There was nothing left to discuss. It was finished, and we both knew it. Behind me, Peter's voice came, low and absolute. You've disgraced us, Maya. Don't come back to our home either. You're no longer our daughter. The last thing I heard as I walked down the hallway was her sobs echoing in that room, the door closing on the life she had chosen to throw away. 3 days had passed before I finally uncovered the identity of the person who'd made that anonymous call. At exactly 7 o'clock in the evening, a knock echoed through my apartment. On the other side stood Renee Cooper, a manila folder tucked under one arm, her face bearing the weary look of someone who'd been carrying an unspoken weight for far too long. You're Damon Riker, she said, not asking, but stating it as fact. And you're the one who called me, I answered, her voice instantly familiar. She gave a short nod. Mind if I come in? We need to talk. The place I called home was pared down to essentials, nothing more. When I'd walked out on the house, I'd taken only what I needed, leaving everything else for Maya to sort through. One couch, a TV, a handful of dishes and utensils. The space had the look of a man starting from zero. Renee settled onto the couch, placing the folder in her lap before flipping it open. Inside was a careful spread of photographs, bank statements, credit card slips, and a neatly handwritten timeline. My husband's name is Blake Cooper, she began. He's the man you saw with your wife. I studied her for a moment. Early 30s, quietly attractive, with a sharp, attentive gaze that suggested she missed very little. How long have you known? I asked. About Maya? 3 weeks? About his other women? More like 6 months, she replied without pause. She began arranging the documents across my coffee table with the precision of a prosecutor laying out exhibits. That was exactly how it felt, like she'd been building a case. Blake thinks he's clever, she said, but he leaves a trail, started hitting the gym at odd hours, paying more attention to grooming, buying new cologne, classic tells, so I started keeping an eye on him. The financial records told their own story. Charges from the Ridgecrest Hotel stretching back 4 months. Always Tuesdays. Always the same room rate. Other slips revealed purchases at lingerie boutiques and dinners at restaurants I knew Maya had never spoken of. I hired a PI, Renee continued. Got pictures of him with 3 different women in half a year. Your wife's just the most recent. She slid a photo toward me, Maya and Blake walking through the hotel parking lot, hands intertwined. Their easy closeness told me this wasn't a fling in its first days. Why not just go to him? I asked. Because if I'd confronted him alone, he'd have spun lies, made empty promises, maybe even shifted the blame onto me, she said, gathering the papers into a neat stack. I didn't want a scene. I wanted an outcome he couldn't dodge. So you called me, I said, finally understanding her reasoning. I checked into your wife first, Renee explained. Her social media, the family portraits, all the posts about her flawless marriage. I knew exposing her in front of her parents would hit harder than any quiet conversation. Her methodical approach was hard not to admire. And your husband? I asked. He's unemployed now, she replied evenly. One of the other women worked with him. Her husband told their company and they decided Blake wasn't worth the trouble. I've locked him out of our finances and filed for divorce. Full custody. She smoothed her skirt and rose to her feet. I didn't call to wound you, Damon. I called because you deserved the truth, and because I believed you'd handle it with integrity. What made you so sure? I asked. I talked to some of your co-workers at the warehouse. Every single one said the same thing. You're loyal, honest, the kind of man who deserves far better than what he's been given. At the door, she paused. I'm sorry for what you've gone through. but I'm not sorry about the outcome. After she left, I sat in the stillness, thinking about the space between revenge and justice. Revenge burns hot, fast, gratifying for a moment, then gone. Justice moves slowly, deliberately, and leaves a permanent mark. Renee Cooper understood the difference. She wasn't after petty hurt. She wanted balance restored. I took out my phone. 17 missed calls from Maya in the last 3 days. Dozens of unread messages. I erased them all and blocked her number. Some doors, once closed, should remain sealed for good. 6 months later, I was in Ryan North's garage, helping his 8-year-old son Toby put together a bicycle. He hovered beside me while I showed him how to check each bolt for tightness. Peter Harlan would have approved. I was passing along the same lessons he'd drilled into me. Take your time, do it right. Why so tight, Uncle Damon? Toby asked as I worked the wrench. Because if it's loose, it'll fail right when you need it most, I told him. He thought about it, then said, like with people, kids notice more than we think. Exactly, Toby, like with people. Life had found its rhythm again. The apartment I'd rented right after leaving the hotel had changed into something that truly felt like mine. I'd bought proper furniture, hung pictures, even planted herbs in the kitchen window. It was smaller than the house I'd shared with Maya, but every item in it was mine by choice, not by inheritance from a life I'd outgrown. Each cup, chair, and book marked the start of something intentional, not the leftovers of a shattered past. Work had turned into my refuge. Not long after the ordeal at the hotel, Ryan's wife began including me in their family dinners, starting the night I repaired their broken washing machine. From then on, I became Uncle Damon to their 3 kids. It wasn't the family I'd once imagined for myself, but it was real, built on honesty rather than convenience. Through the grapevine, I heard that Maya had moved into a cramped studio on the far side of town, barely making enough to survive. Her parents still refused to speak to her, and the same neighbors who had once welcomed her now treated her as a cautionary example. I took no pleasure in her struggles, but I felt no remorse either. She had made her bed, and now she was lying in it. Renee Cooper had gone on to start her own private investigation business, focusing on helping betrayed spouses uncover the truths about their marriages. We would meet for coffee now and then, 2 people who had walked through the same wreckage and recognized the scars in each other. There was never anything romantic between us. Both of us were too occupied with rebuilding our lives to think about that. What we did have was a friendship grounded in respect and the shared knowledge of what it meant to survive. At one point, Blake tried to get in touch, saying he wanted to speak man to man about the past. I let the call go unanswered, just as I ignored his attempt to contact Peter Harlan. Some men can't accept that certain lines, once crossed, can't be smoothed over or explained away. There, I said, tightening the last bolt on Toby's bike. She's good to go. Want to try it out? Toby jumped on and began riding circles in the driveway, wearing the kind of grin that makes you think of someone who's just learned they can fly. From the porch, Ryan watched, pride and gratitude mingling in his expression. Thanks, Damon, he called. He's been waiting forever for that thing to work again. No problem at all, I replied, putting the tools back in the box. That's what family's for. A family, not the one I'd once pictured for myself, but the one I had chosen, and more importantly, the one that had chosen me. As I drove home in the deepening evening, my thoughts drifted toward the idea of foundations, the difference between building something on lies and building it on truth. I thought about the calm that comes from knowing exactly where you stand with the people in your life. My phone buzzed with a text from Clara Harlan. Damon, thinking of you today. Hope you're doing well. Love, Mom. She still signed her messages that way, still considered me part of the family, even though her daughter had long since lost that privilege. Some bonds survive anything, no matter the storms they've faced. I pulled into my parking space and sat for a moment, looking up at the warm light glowing from my apartment windows. Tomorrow was Thursday, the middle of the week. Another day of honest work ahead, another night of quiet contentment. Some would see it as a small life, but I knew the difference between small and simple, between settling and choosing. I had chosen truth over comfort, self-respect over habit, integrity over shared history. And for the first time in many years, when I turned off the lights and let sleep take me, I didn't lie awake, wondering what new lies the morning would bring. I had learned how to build a life on a foundation that wouldn't collapse under pressure. And the right kind of foundation, once set, can hold steady for a lifetime.